Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Roll. Alright, it is March 1st today. That means two things for me. Number one, it is election day here in Texas. We're having a primary election today. For those of you who aren't aware, what a primary election is basically the parties get to choose who will be their candidate for different offices. Normally you'll have the normal election, the general election, where we will elect a leader, but on the primary day, there may be 3 or 4 Republicans, there may be 3 or 4 Democrats running for a particular office, and now we're going to decide which one of those multiple candidates is going to be the man or woman who will be either sent to Austin or to Washington, D.C. to represent us. So I want to take care of that, but also today, March 1st is the 2-year anniversary of my father passing away, and so I want to spend a few minutes talking about him a little bit, kind of introduce you to who he was and the kind of a person he was. So we'll catch up with that in a little bit. Alright, we're at the voting place, and I know I've shown this before where the whole place is just packed with campaign literature. It's been like this for a couple of weeks, but it's even crazier this year, I think, than I've seen in the past. There's just so many signs out here, and actually I think there's actual representatives who are running here. You remember when I interviewed him? He's on the ballot today. Hi! Whoa, careful! No falling allowed.
She's my third one. Yeah, I was gonna say. There you go.
How many people have someone named Christy Hunting Horse running for office? Yeah, we do here. Louis Gohmert, I've been hearing things about him. This Ryan Luna, who's running for judge, seems to have a pretty good following. His stuff is all over the place, and actually I had somebody come to the door trying to sell me on him, so we'll take a good look at him and see what's going on, but I think it's time to go in and vote. What do you say? Alright, I'm back. I've done my voting and done my civic duty. I gotta admit, that was a little odd of an experience. Usually when you get into a voting booth like that, it's do you vote for you? Do you choose this candidate? Do you choose that candidate? There were a lot more than I expected this time because, it was school superintendents and judges and commissioners to different boards and stuff like that. So, I've seen that before, but there were a lot of them this time. What was weird, though, is it almost seemed like they were giving us a poll. When you got down to the ballot propositions almost seemed like they were polling people to figure out what they wanted, because it took some kind of very general issues like should children be required to wear masks in schools, or should a parent have the right to pull their kids out of a public school and put them in private school and have the money follow them. It seemed like a bunch of polling questions at the end rather than actual ballot propositions. When I think of a ballot proposition, it's should McLennan County pay $50 million to repair this road or to repair this pipeline or something like that. Like I said, these were it seemed like a poll question at the end, which kind of surprised me. It was kind of weird. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, in addition to being election day, this is also the 2-year anniversary of my father's passing. I got the call 2 years ago tonight, about 10:15, something like that. You got to remember, this was the day before I was supposed to start my new job. So my father died 2 years ago today. I started my new job 2 years ago tomorrow. So it's just weird how that all came together. But I wanted to tell you a little about him so you know who he is. And we've talked about him a little bit in the live streams and the likes, but basically from as early as I can remember, he always worked on airplanes. He used to work at the McDonnell Douglas Corporation in Long Beach. In fact, that was a job he took after he married my mom in 1963. He moved out here, and she stayed there to finish up her job at that for that year, and then she joined him. But he immediately started working for the McDonnell Douglas Corporation, and he was making all those passenger jets, the DC-10, the DC-9, the DC-8, all of those that were made from basically the mid-60s all the way up until about 1980. So it was always kind of cool when anybody would ask, what does my dad do? It's like, yeah, he builds airplanes for McDonnell Douglas. I actually got to go down there and tour the facility once, which was kind of fun. They had some sort of an open house, and we got to go in and see that. And I got to walk through one of the assembly buildings where they put the airplanes together. So I thought that was really cool. Now, kind of in the mid-70s, he decided he wanted to update his education. He wanted to go for a master's degree in electrical engineering. And when he completed that, he actually took a position with another company. Another company recruited him away. That company was called Northrop. And Northrop was working on a top secret project at that time. And for probably the first 5 or so years that my father was working on this project at Northrop, we had no idea what he was doing. We could speculate based on his experience that it was probably airplane related, some secret airplane he was working on. But beyond that, we had no idea what it was. And it continued that way until the project was released and brought out from under the shadows, as they say. And at that point, there was all sorts of really cool memorabilia that my father gave me that I still have. In fact, I have it hanging in my master bedroom. I'm going to show you some of those pictures here. Also, some kind of cool other things in addition to pictures. I got an official pin that's like red, white, and blue with streamers on a pin shaped like the stealth bomber. It says B-2 rollout day, and that's kind of cool. And I got basically a little stealth bomber on a stick, kind of a display thing, and I've shown you all of those along the way. But that was always kind of cool. Now at the end, once they got the plane kind of developed, he started having to travel to a place called Palmdale, because that was where they were testing it, and he had to drive about 3 or 4 hours every day to get there, and the day started at 8, so he'd have a van that would pick him up at 4 in the morning, and he wouldn't get home until 8 or 9 at night, and just go to bed, and he'd start the whole thing up the next day. Eventually that kind of caught up with him, and he was kind of getting to the point where he was ready to retire, and he did that, and at that point took it upon himself to go traveling with my mom and some of our friends. Now, one memory I have of my dad that I always thought kind of amusing involved one of the trips that he took. And this one he took before he actually retired, so he was still working at the time. He wanted to take a cruise to Alaska. And since Alaska's like 90 miles from Russia, he had to go through a background check, and they had to do all sorts of background checks on him to make sure that it was going to be okay for him to do that. That's just kind of how the way things work when you're dealing with secret projects. Now, after my father retired, that was just a couple of years after I bought my first house in California. And, being the handyman that he was, and he enjoyed immensely participating in me doing all sorts of things to that house. When I painted, when we put the sprinkler in, when we built the patio cover, when we built the fish pond, when we installed the lawn and the planter and planted the trees and all that. He was a part of all of that. And I think a lot of that, is watching him do that and kind of figuring stuff out on my own kind of is what made me, kind of be, somewhat handy myself in dealing with things. And that's really contributed immensely to getting this house going and turning it into my home. Now, one of the memories I have of my dad and him helping me on my house was when we installed the sprinklers in my backyard. when they when they build the house, it's just kind of a rough area around there, and then once they get basically all the construction done and lay out the concrete so people don't have to walk through the dirt anymore, then they bring in some fill soil to kind of level everything out and get the slopes all right so the water all drains the right direction, stuff like that. Well, in this particular house, they must have picked up the cheapest, lowest quality dirt they had, and after 2 or 3 years of it sitting in the yard getting rained on and stuff like that, it had turned into almost rock. It was like it was just a really heavy clay, and so it was not a lot of fun when we had to get to the point where we were digging trenches to put sprinkler lines. In fact, I have this bar right here that I've had for many years. It's about 6 feet long, and it's a solid piece of iron, and it's something that we got at the time to enable us to literally trench through the yard that was in the ground that was in the yard. And it's come in handy here too, as I've been digging holes here. I've been using this to break up the limestone that I've told you is about 6 inches under the surface. I think one of the things I miss most about him is knowing that now that I'm in a new house and starting my life over, that I miss having him here helping me do this, because I know that if he was physically capable of being here, he would probably spend a whole bunch of time here, and we'd be getting this done really, really quickly, and he'd be enjoying every moment of it. So like I said, I miss that immensely about him, and I know every one of these projects I do are really kind of secretly dedicated to him, just because they were inspired by him. I learned how to do the things by watching him and talking to him, and he'll be a part of my life forever.